Remembering our ancestors, I vote for Adolphus by Christy Smatley for bluenotesoul.com. As the last days to vote for president approaches in America, the nation is literally divided and distressed. A plethora of unfathomable events have broken out the country over. All matter of voter suppression is taking place in real time. On Sunday, Trump supporters surrounded a Joe Biden and Kamala Harris campaign passenger bus in Texas, while in North Carolina yesterday, police pepper sprayed protesters who were peacefully marching to the polls. My goal is not to change the outcome of the election. I just want you to know that my vote is for Adolphus. No, Adolphus is not a contemporary of Kanye West asking to be written into the ballot. Adolphus is my great-great-grandfather. I know this may sound confusing, but allow me to explain. As the world protested the heinous killing of George Floyd this summer, I turned to my roots to find answers to this chaotic world of inequality. I joined Ancestry.com, took a DNA test, talked to my family, blew the dust off my library card, did extensive and expensive research, and covered myself with the dirty roots of my family tree. I found gruesome stories of rape, slavery, and murder. I found hopeful stories of businesses owned and sprawling properties. I found a rainbow of races and long-buried family secrets. Most importantly, I found Adolphus. Adolphus Johnson Marable is my great-great-grandfather by way of my father's mother. He was born in Georgia around 1840 through 1850-ish. His mother was an unnamed black slave, probably Jamaican, and his father was a white farmer named James. I learned from official documentation my dear old grandpa got into a bit of legal trouble. Quite frankly, Adolphus went to jail. Was it for murder? Nope. Burglary? No. Kidnapping? Nope. On February 21st, 1877, my 21-year-old great-great-grandfather was convicted in Clark County, Georgia, for illegally trying to vote. His conviction date corresponds with one of the biggest presidential elections in American history, where, like today, the country was divided. The presidential election of 1876 could have started another civil war. The race was between Rutherford B. Hayes, Republican governor of Ohio, and Samuel Tilden, the Democratic governor of New York. The election itself was rife with voter suppression of free blacks, beatings, lynchings, and voter fraud. Black people were largely Republican at the time, and after slavery, free black men had the right to vote. Largely, black people wanted a win for the Republican Party so that a military presence would stay in the South and they could continue to enjoy the new freedom and human rights after the Civil War with the aid of military force. Southern whites, conversely, wanted a win for the Democrats so they could take back control over the South and abuse African Americans. Somewhere in the mix of all this mayhem was our story's hero, Adolphus, a 5'6" young black man who just wanted to exercise his right to vote. However, Adolphus was convicted of, quote, illegally voting, end quote, in February 1877, while there was still a race to count ballots before the presidential inauguration coming up in March. Adolphus, though technically mulatto with a white father and a black mother, was looked at as a colored man unworthy of casting a vote in an election that would greatly affect the course of his life and the lives of all black people for generations to come, including his great-great-granddaughter, who was born 88 years after his last breath. Hayes eventually won the vote, but with an exceedingly steep price. He won the White House, but in exchange, he had to let go control of the South, thusly ending the Reconstruction era and leaving disenfranchised blacks at the mercy of Southern whites, who were still bitter after losing the right to enslave African Americans after the Civil War. Jim Crow now enters the South. On November 3rd, 2020, I vote for freedom. I vote for democracy. I vote for change. And most importantly, I vote for my great-great-grandfather, Adolphus Johnson Marable. My ancestor risked his life by going to the polls on November the 7th, 1876, so that the future of his children would be secure. He did this heroic act so that every extension and expression of his seed would be treated fairly and equally. Though the 1876 election did not actually bend in the favor of the black race as he hoped, what's the problem with his great-great-granddaughter giving it another try for our family 144 years later? I vote so that 144 years from today, and maybe 88 years after my last breath, my great-great-granddaughters and grandsons can enjoy a country that is safe, free, and equal. Though I never met Adolphus, and all I have is a picture of his brother Morris, his son George Washington Marable, and his niece Adora Marable, named after him. I love my great-grandfather, and I am thankful for his brave sacrifice and the sacrifice of others like him, such as Abraham Woods, John Lewis, Fred Shuttleworth, Medgar Evers, Rosa Parks, and millions more. On November 3rd, I vote for Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, Emmett Till, Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, Virgil Ware, and Johnny Robertson, because racism wouldn't allow them to grow old enough to gain the right to vote. On November 3rd, I vote for Breonna Taylor, Tatiana Jefferson, Philando Castile, George Floyd, and Walter Wallace Jr., since they weren't given the privilege of making this year's election. On November 3rd, I vote for my family. I vote for Adolphus. Who are you voting for? This has been Christy Smetley for bluenotesoul.com.